New York City's subway system is one of the largest and busiest in the world, carrying millions of passengers every day. But in the 1970s and 1980s, it was also one of the most dangerous and decrepit, plagued by crime, vandalism, graffiti, and decay. The subway became a symbol of the city's decline, as well as a battleground for gangs, drug dealers, muggers, and robbers. The subway's troubles began in the late 1960s, when the city faced a fiscal crisis and cut funding for public transportation. The subway's infrastructure deteriorated, trains broke down, stations became filthy, and service was unreliable. The subway also suffered from a lack of security, as the transit police were understaffed and overwhelmed. As a result, the subway became a prime target for criminals who preyed on the vulnerable and unsuspecting riders. The subway's crime wave reached its peak in the late 1970s and early 1980s when the city was hit by a heroin epidemic, a crack cocaine explosion, and a rise in homelessness. The subway became a haven for drug users who injected, smoked, or snorted their substances in the trains and stations. The subway also became a hotspot for violence as gangs fought for turf and control over the drug trade. Some of the most notorious gangs that operated in the subway were the Savage Skulls, the Savage Nomads, the Black Spades, the Jolly Stompers, and the Decepticons. The subway also witnessed some of the most brutal and shocking crimes in the city's history, such as the murder of John Lennon's killer Mark David Chapman, the rape and beating of the Central Park jogger, and the shooting of 4 young men by Bernhard Goetz, the so-called subway vigilant. Lucky for those of us who never have the chance to see it, Swiss photographer Willy Spiller was there, and the dark and atmospheric series of photos he took has now come to be known as Hell on Wheels. These photographs are a joyous and soulful trip in the bygone era of the New York subway system. The photographer Willy Spiller, living in New York at the time, documented his underground travels with the curiosity of a foreigner, fascinated by the rush and the madness of its time. It's the period of the first rap music, graffiti, the warriors in the cinema, guardian angels on the trains, and Ed Koch in charge of a broke and crime-riddled city. Willy Spiller's images are as much a visual document of this incomparable realm as they are a syncopated, colorful poem to the city of New York and its people. Unfortunately, Willy Spiller also witnessed the spike in crime, a large portion of which took place in the city's underground quarters. The rate of violent incidents in the New York subway was so high by 1980 that the NYPD had over 2,300 police officers patrolling the system at all times. Spiller took his chances and documented what he saw. Though the photos were first released in 1984, Hell on Wheels had its glory restored in 2016. Sturm and Drang publishers put Spiller's work to print in a limited edition series of hardcover, vivid color coffee table books. These images hardly tell a story of crime and danger. Dr. Tobia Bezzola writes in the book's chilling foreword, Willy Spiller doesn't discover darkness in the underground but rather an idiosyncratic, vivid realm of its own. The subway's situation began to improve in the late 1980s and early 1990s, when the city and the state invested more money and resources into the subway's maintenance, modernization, and security. The subway's crime rate dropped significantly as the transit police increased their presence and effectiveness, and as the city's overall crime rate declined. The subway also underwent a major cleanup as the graffiti was removed, the stations were renovated, and the trains were replaced. The subway's image and reputation also changed, as it became a source of pride and inspiration for the city, as well as a cultural icon for artists, musicians, and filmmakers. The subway's transformation from a dark and dangerous underworld to a bright and safe transportation system is one of the most remarkable stories of urban renewal and resilience in the history of New York City. The subway story is also a testament to the courage and perseverance of the millions of New Yorkers who rode the subway every day, despite the risks and challenges they faced. The subway story is the story of New York City itself, a city that never stops moving, never gives up, and never loses its spirit.